Dominaria United spoilers are going bonkers. Liliana the Veil is now in Pioneer. We have Shieldred, who's back for lore purposes, and even a Johnny is completed as a fur Exian for all my furries out there. Anyway, I'm here to talk about something a bit more important. For all my modern mill players out there, I'm here to talk about a recent spoiler that has you in a bit of a tussle. I want to give you the ins and outs of this card. Before you have a real opinion about it, I want you to think about all aspects of it. And maybe this solidifies the fact that it's not going to be a good card for you. And maybe this gives you the option to at least say, hey, I might just buy 2-3 copies and try it out. I want to give you that option and I want to walk through it today. The card I'm referring to is Founding the Third Path, a blue and 1 for enchantment Saga that has read ahead, which is going to be very important in a second. But for chapter 1, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 1 or 2, not 0, right? So it's not 2 or less, it's 1 or 2 from your hand without paying its mana cost. Chapter 2, target player mills 4 cards. Exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, you may cast the copy. That is the third chapter. Now, for many of you modern players, it might be a little unfamiliar, the Saga template. What you really want to think of is Urza Saga. And I really bring this up, not even to be mean to a couple of you, but like some of you don't even realize that this is a Saga. Some of you just care that this is an enchantment and creates constructs, but this is a Saga, which is again, not a very common type or like a permanent type in modern. So just want to bring up, it works like that. You just go turn by turn on your main phase to get these abilities. So bringing it back, read ahead is the reason why this card is interesting for mill players right now. It gives you the ability to play the card and start on any chapter. You're not forced to start on chapter 1. You can start on 2, you can start on 3, which gives the card some reach, which is why I think from a mill perspective, it provides a value proposition of are each and every single one of these chapters valuable to us. And I want to break that down from generally a modern perspective and then chapter by chapter to then give you that complete breakdown, that wholesome thought as to whether or not this is going to be worth it to you in your modern mill deck. Now, firstly, let's just kind of go kick it out of the way with Aspiring Spike's kind of thoughts on See the Truth. Obviously, memeing out here is going to make See the Truth a playable card. Blue and a 1 for a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, rest of the bottom of your library. If the spell was cast from anywhere outside your hand, you can put those cards in your hand instead. So it could be a 2 mana sorcery speed, draw 3 if you use that third mode. But of course, we already have expressive iteration that exiles cards. If you exiled that card, you can then cast it that way. But maybe with 8 effects or more effects like this, then maybe it's playable. Who knows? I'm here for the mill players. So with that in mind, let's discuss how this value proposition works in the sense that I think this enchantment provides a little bit more reach to modern mill players, right? We're always looking for some way to get advantage out of our cards, potentially reuse our cards, and provide an extension in the late game to see how we can continue our value and really just always do something on every turn, right? Like every deck wants to be doing something on every turn, but modern mill tends to just go kaput because of the kind of bombastic, like instantaneous value that we get. It's hard to draw that out, and we've gotten better over time, but I'm going too far. Let's break this card down chapter by chapter. Chapter 1, we want to talk about you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 1 or 2 from your hand without paying its mana cost. Now, you get a free cast out of a card. Again, as I mentioned, you don't get a 0 cost spell. It's 1 or 2. Now, you have to think about it like this. I'm going to go through some options, but first and foremost, this is card disadvantage. You're paying 2 mana to cast 2 spells. You're getting almost 3-4 mana value worth of stuff to just cast a 1 or 2 mana value worth of effects, right? 2 spells, 1 spell effect. It's card disadvantage, right? However way you put it, right? Unless the card itself has a casting restriction or, something where if you cast it for 2 or you can't cast it for, I don't know, whatever it is, Founding of the Third Path is card disadvantage. But for mill, here's some of the options. You have Visions of Beyond. So essentially 3 total worth of mana. You can cast for 2 in this sense. Drown in the Loch, great here as well. But notably, you can't cast cards like Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is going to be the one big ding against it, or one of the many. Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Fractured Sanity, you're not able to cast these cards. Modern Mill has evolved past some of its older Glimpse the Unthinkable breaking and entering style effects. And really, we've evolved for the better. And so I'm not saying exactly that we should regress to those, but it's going to be a big ding against this. You're playing your answers, you're playing your mid-game pieces, you're not playing your finishes, you're not playing cards that forward your game plan when you're playing a card like Founding the Third Path. Now, obviously, Glimpse the Unthinkable is an option, right? If you're playing a Glimpse build, maybe you're playing more mill spells in your main board, you could play a card like this as an option to continue those. And obviously the read ahead provides more option, but you have to think of this. You can't just be playing this for its second effect. You can't just be playing this for its third effect. You have to have options for all of its effects open, because each effect isn't like extremely powerful. It has to be powerful in a package due to its options. So if you're playing Glimpse, it's there. And of course, it's a May ability. It doesn't force you to cast anything. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know, just read ahead. You just skip the ability. Unless you have some way to manipulate those or some type of stipulation. It's a May ability, I guess. Go to chapter 2. Something a little bit more nuanced, right? So target player mills 4 cards. So that's going to be target player as in your opponent or target player as in you. And obviously we can read ahead and see, pun intended here. You read ahead and see that chapter 3 is where chapter 2 is going to kind of come into play. So this is comparably equal to something like Fractured Sanity that cycles away, but notably it draws you a card and mills 4. Fractured Sanity is then uncounterable mill 4, and which I guess, you could think of that with something like Founding of the Third Path. If you started on chapter 1, chapter 2 could be an uncounterable mill effect if you just naturally let it go along. So if you're worried about the counterspell decks, I mean, there's Teferi Time Raveler, there's other bounce effects, Prismatic Ending deals with any permanent. So kind of give and take. There also is the aspect that, if you needed a little bit of extra reach, if you played if you played Fractured Founding of the Third Path for 2, and then maybe cast Adrenaline Lock to kill a creature, you need a little bit of extra reach for your Visions of Beyond. You mill them for 4. Everything has to be considered. But again, it's very small. Most of the times, honestly, you're probably going to be casting this card to mill yourself, right, for that third effect. But again, as a top deck at a baseline, if you don't have the mana to use that third ability, which we're going to go into, you have the mill 4, which is something in terms of the top deck. At least it's forwarding your game plan. Now, chapter 3 is going to be the big part, right? It's going to allow you to read ahead and cast a card from your graveyard. So Founding of the Third Path, exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it to me, cast a copy. The exiling an instant or sorcery is actually key. So first of all, exile, if you need to cast Visions of Beyond from your own graveyard, there is that small consideration that you are removing a card. And you copy it, you may cast a copy, so you still have to kind of work with the regular restrictions of the card, in the sense that you do have to hard cast a card. It's not that first ability where you get to cast it without paying its mana cost, and it's only an instant or sorcery. So with a card like Mission Briefing, which is the most comparable thing, we get a similar effect, right? So Mission Briefing, instant speed, blue, a little bit harder to cast. You get the Surveil 2, you get to kind of fix the top of your deck, and then you get to do fun things like cast an Archive Trap for 0, but that allows you to do it at instant speed, whereas something like Founding of the Third Path, you have to do it sorcery speed. Maybe you have a Field of Ruin to set that up, but the wording isn't like something like Snapcaster Mage. You do get to cast Archive Trap for 0. Okay, so that's at least sweet, right? If you have a way to set it up, God forbid you have that one black sorcery that forces both players to search, don't be doing that. But if you have a way to set it up, you can do that with Archive Trap. Gives you a little bit of reach. But I mean, that's really it from a broad scope. My final thoughts are really going to be summarized into a couple of extra pieces, and then I want to talk about whether or not I think it's playable. Those are all of its chapters. Some of the smaller things to note are obviously the second mode, target player, right? Mills 4, if you need a little bit of extra reach, Veil of Summer counters that. It's target player. Leyline Sanctity gonna counter that, right? So you're gonna have to probably target yourself, which isn't that bad, but if you needed a little bit of extra reach, if you casted that turn and you go straight to chapter 2 with the read ahead, something like Veil of Summer is gonna stop you. So always something to keep in mind. It's not a very commonly played card anymore, considering the spells that are good in the format right now, but still something worth considering. Next up is Manic Scribe, in the sense that you can mill yourself to not only feed the Delirium, but if you go straight to the read ahead to exile a card to put an enchantment type in your yard, not a very common type that exists in modern mill, so it's a very easier way to kind of get to Delirium. And also if you're playing Saltine Mill for something like Traverse the Ulvenwald, it gives you some extra shenanigans. But I mean, if you're playing Traverse the Ulvenwald, you're probably feeding your graveyard needs your ways. I mean, you're probably playing Mesmeric Orb and all that stuff, but it's worth considering as an enchantment type that you can instantly play for 2, get the third mode, put it into your graveyard. Once that third chapter resolves, it's a thing, right? Feeding your graveyard, it's a thing. I think the card has potential. I think the reach is there, but I'm not really completely convinced that the card, after thinking about it for a bit, that the card is going to be the next staple. I think the card's worth testing though, because it provides that top deck power in the sense that, if you have it in your hand, you can pay it on 2 and then set up something long term. Maybe you burn away visions, maybe you burn a fatal push to kill a creature, you have it out and you're just using its abilities to set up long term. Your opponent does something, instead of milling yourself, you mill them, or you mill yourself instead of milling them. And then on that third turn, depending on the game state, you're going to be able to pick anything. So you get a lot of options within your opponent sees the inevitability. So it is there, and especially the read ahead gives it the most potential because you're not stuck on just starting on chapter 1 and you're empty-handed in your top deck. You can just top deck the card, go straight to the next chapter. If you have enough mana, 5 mana, you play it on 2, read ahead on 3, you then cast a Tasha's or a Fractured Sandy, whatever it might be. You just cast it and you're on your merry way. You get a little bit of a bit of value with it. And so the card has potential. I think having extra pieces of value and recursion is important, but then the argument might be, if we were looking for something like this, why not play Mission Briefing? And you know what? I don't think that's actually a bad thing to say. With Fractured Sandy and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, the deck did lean towards blue. So blue is actually an easier proposition nowadays. So if you're looking for that long game value, the Surveil 2 might actually be better because then you can feed away bad cards off the top of your deck, set up your draws, and then, just recast the spell from there. So there's a lot of give and take, right? You don't get all the options, but then Mission Briefing is a strong counter argument. If you're playing that, why not just play Mission Briefing? So I think the card has potential. And again, that's really the cop-out answer you're going to get from me. This video was really just to give you all the ins and outs as a mill player to see if this is going to be worth considering in your 75 or your 80 or, well, God forbid, whatever you're playing after that. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you like what I had to say, obviously leave a like and I don't know, do the bell notification thing, do the YouTube stuff, but I really am just here to hear about your opinion. Let me know what you think. Am I kind of off the rocker? Am I missing a point? Maybe there's a key part of the card that I'm missing that has potential with another mill spell out there. Who knows? The card said mill. We had to look it up. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of Dominaria United spoilers. Have a nice day.